Hi, Leslie. It's good to see you.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Mary Brenner. I'm just going to do a quick round of introductions, but I'm going to wait just a minute to see if more folks show up in the lobby. And I do want to note this session is going to be, or actually is currently being recorded. And so we will be, there will be a presentation slideshow, and then at the end, there's going to be a Q&A session. So until the Q&A session, feel free if you want to turn off your cameras, that's fine. We do ask that you stay muted during the first part of the meeting. And then at the end, when there's the Q&A session, we're going to stop recording. You can turn your camera on and we'll be able to have more discussion. All right, I'm still seeing a few people coming in, so I'm going to give it another, let's say 30 seconds before we get started. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Mary Brenner. I'm a senior planner with the City of Keene. I'm in the Community Development Department. Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to just do a quick introduction of the project's team and then hand it over to the city manager for a welcome from her. So I already introduced myself, also from the city's Community Development Department. We have Evan Clements, who is a planner, and Megan Fortson, also a planner. And then from the consultant team, we have David Burrell, who's the CEO of Future IQ, as well as Heather Brannigan, who's vice president of Future IQ. Heather is here today, and I believe she'll be speaking later on. We also have Leslie Gray, who is the vice president of John Stover and Associates, or JSNA. So she's also on the screen and is going to be leading a few of the task forces. So she'll be meeting some of you later on. And then Courtney Powell's also here today from WGI. She's a community planning manager. Courtney, did I get that correct?
Maybe? Yeah, that's okay. Fine. Yeah, thanks.
So yeah, that's the team that's here today. And feel free, if you ever have any questions about this project or want to reach out and talk to someone, certainly feel free to reach out to anyone on the team. The planners are all in the Community Development Department with the city, so you'll be able to find us on the city's website, or you can just come visit us on the 4th floor of City Hall. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to the city manager.
There's 28 people here.
Great, thanks, Mary. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you for agreeing to be a volunteer and to share with us your time and your expertise as we work through these important subcommittees. The work we undertake
together. Can anyone else hear the city manager?
Can you hear me, Mary? Okay. Can you hear me, Mary? Okay. The work we undertake together over the coming weeks and months will lay a critical foundation for the city's next master plan, a document that will guide the vision and actions of our community for years to come. Our focus areas, livable housing, a thriving economy, connected mobility, vibrant neighborhoods, an adaptable workforce, and a flourishing environment, are ambitious but necessary to create a city that is not only a great place to live and work, but also a regional magnet for talent, investment, and innovation. Each of these elements are interconnected, and it will be our task to ensure that the strategies and action items we develop address them holistically. For example, livable housing. If we ensure housing affordability and accessibility, it will support vibrant neighborhoods and attract a diverse population. The thriving economy. A strong economy will create opportunities for all, driving prosperity and adaptability within our workforce. Connected mobility. Integrated transportation systems will make our city more accessible and sustainable, enhancing quality of life for our residents and businesses alike. A flourishing environment. Preserving and enhancing our natural resources will not only protect our environment, but also make our city an attractive and healthy place to live. Your work on these subcommittees will directly inform the action items and implementation strategies that will be included in the city's master plan. These recommendations will serve as a blueprint for decision-making at all levels of city government. Additionally, the outcomes of our decisions and deliberations may necessitate changes to the city's land use code to better align our regulations with the goals of the master plan. For example, zoning updates may be required to encourage mixed-use development that support connected mobility or to increase density in areas that align with our vision for livable housing and vibrant neighborhoods. This is a significant opportunity to drive meaningful change for our city. And I encourage all of you to bring your perspectives, ideas, and creativity to this process. Together, we can ensure our city remains a vibrant and thriving and inclusive place for current and future generations. And with that, I just want to thank you again for your willingness to serve and turn it back over to Mary.
Thank you. And my apologies for interrupting you. I had the sound off on my computer.
Oh, all right. I was like, and I couldn't
everyone.
see you because I was running dual systems and I couldn't see you. So it's okay.
Sorry, everyone. So yeah, I'm actually going to turn it over to, I believe, Heather at this point to run through a slide deck and provide you with some background information. And Heather, are you able to share your screen?
Mary, it's going to be David who's running through the slide deck. So just so you know.
Is David here?
Yes. Hello, here I am.
Okay, there.
I'm just looking to share this window. All right. You should be seeing my slide deck now, are you? Hello?
I see it.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yeah, sorry, I'd muted myself.
Okay, all right. So, hello. So I'm David Burrell. I'm going to bring in Leslie and Courtney and Heather as we go through this, but I do want to set a bit of a, just sort of set the catch up here. So this has been a big two-part process, right? So the development of the comprehensive master plan we're doing in two big chunks. So one is around the community vision, and then one is around more the technical aspects of the comprehensive master plan. So we've recently finished the first big component, which was the vision development. That had components in it where we had initial projects set up. We did a lot of community engagement and outreach and research, think tank report, community survey, and so on. We had the strategic pillar roundtable. Actually, I've got to say that one of the things that's been a real feature for this project is the amount of engagement that we've had from the community. So it's been great. But what we're now in the pivot to is the next big component, which is the comprehensive master plan and the future land use map. And this is where our partner consulting companies, WGI and JS&A, so that's Leslie and Courtney, the other way around, are really going to bring their technical expertise to the pillar development. So as was said at the start, we'll be all collectively working with those teams as we develop the information for each of the pillars and the chapters of the master plan. We're going to go back through this diagram in a little bit. But I wanted to just sort of orientate you to a few resources. So I know some of you have been involved in this process right from the get-go. Some of you may be new to it in terms of coming in at this point. A good resource for you to be able to kind of stay in touch and keep up to date is the project portal. So we have the Keene masterplan.com project portal. It'll take you to this page. It'll have all sorts of information. There's drop downs under the about, discussion boards, surveys, and so on. Really good resources under the resource tab, communication toolkit. There's a list of all the newsletters we've had and so on. So if you're new to it, we'd really invite you to make use of this resource. As I said, yes.
I'm sorry, but that your PowerPoint isn't advancing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stuck on the process slide.
Okay. Anybody troubleshoot me on that one because it's advancing on my end? Mary, are you able to show it your end? You able to share the slide deck?
Sure, I can do that. Give me one moment to open it.
I'll stop sharing mine. Sorry about that, everybody. Does anybody else have trouble with Teams here? Anybody? All right, great. Thank you, Mary. So if you could just jump forward a couple of slides there. Yeah, keep going. Okay. So I was talking about this. So we're going to go through this diagram in more detail, but I'll kind of keep us going. So go to the next one, please, Mary. So I was talking about the portal as a resource. So you can see the URL there. You should all have that. If you haven't had a chance, I would, as I said, strongly recommend you go and have a look at it. We have discussion boards there too, where that's going to be part of your role to engage with the discussion about the various pillars and the whole range of topics that are under that. But that's sort of self-navigate. You can find your way to that. Okay. Next one, please, Mary. All right. So one of the things I said is that that I've found really intriguing in this project is the level of participation, and not just in terms of numbers of people. I mean, we had over 700 people take the survey, but it's the quality of the participation as well. And I must say that it excites me a lot about the quality of this plan when you have people who are actually quite well informed, come to these sessions and really dig in deep. And I think that's been a feature of this process right through. And I just applaud you for both being willing to be part of these task forces, but also the quality of the work that you and the community has been doing to figure out what is your direction, what's the vision for the future, but then what are the critical building blocks to this whole comprehensive master plan. So next one, please, Mary. So we had the think tank over 2 days. So we had about 80 people who participated in that. Next one, please. What came out of that was actually a really interesting appetite for change. And if you weren't part of it, I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but we teased out appetite for change around community evolution and around development trajectory. So investing in sort of new ideas. And this is like, if you think about community evolution and you think about our development trajectory, both those big themes are right at the heart of a comprehensive master plan, because we are thinking about the physical environment, but we're also thinking about how that relates to and shapes and informs the community and vice versa. What came out of the think tank was really a big desire for people to see an approach where you might say collaborate to adapt. Actually, Mary, if you go to the next slide, I think I've got that highlighted. So these responses here were people's responses to the preferred future. And this was from the think tank and some subsequent data. But you can see there is most responses are in that upper right corner. And they called that future innovative and intentional change squared. So and the lower left is very much the status quo. So it was called Keep On Keeping On, right? So what you can see in this is that the people who've weighed in on this part of the process so far have expressed a big desire for Keene to move forward, but in quite a bold way. I mean, you can look at the endpoints of those axes, and we talk about seize the moment, we talk about collaborate to adapt. This is really quite proactively sort of grabbing a moment in time, being architects of your own future, and really adapting to the circumstances that are coming at us, but also the circumstances you want to create. So I think that's worth bearing in mind as we go through the process of developing out these pillars and the task force, is that the mandate from the work so far is that people want big original thinking. I do not think there's anything off the table, is the point. I mean, obviously we're going to sort of stretch it out and we'll bring it back to sort of like there'll be a reality check in there as well. But I think our process here is our permission is really to think quite boldly about the future and being willing to look at kind of best practices and new ideas and challenge our sort of conventional thinking and so on. That to me was the core element that really came out of the community visioning work that was up to and including the think tank. If you go to the next slide, please, Mary. And that particular future is documented or elaborated on in more detail in the think tank report. But you can see there in the scenario snapshot, it's talking about, you know, at a sort of a community fabric level, people want the community to be really welcoming, with a real reputation for inclusiveness and collaboration. But we're also talking about strong investment in future-oriented infrastructure that prepares the community to be able to adapt, talking about tackling the big issues of housing, utilities, transportation, and at the same time enhancing community character and culture. And also there's a kind of a big topic here about the economy. The economy and the direction of the economy was something that people have expressed a fair bit of concern about. There's this sort of, I guess, early warning signs for some people that some large employers have been exiting the ecosystem, and people are not sure where does the next wave of economic prosperity come from. So that's one issue. The other issue on that one is that there's a large region obviously around Keene, and while this project is looking at Keene inside the city limits, the relationship between the regional economy and the local economy is really important. So, but again, that's elaborated more in the think tank report. Do you want to go to the next one, please, Mary? So the last big session we did together in person was our Future Summit. And I know some of you were at that. We presented the strategic pillars. So this was the strategic pillars is this notion of, if we have a sense of where we want to go in a preferred future, the strategic pillars are really answering the question, how do we get there? And that there's sort of really high level focus areas. So we presented those and we had some great input onto those. You can see on the top left of that picture there. We had stations around the room where people could weigh in with extra ideas. We had a great exercise with a big sheet on the floor, and people kind of added little Lego blocks and strings and so on as a way to kind of visualize how the city might look under certain different ideas for the future and where people thought certain emphasis should be. Next slide, please. And if you want to know who was at the Future Summit, some of them are there on the left, some of them are on the screen right now. But we did document that in a community vision report. That is also available on the project portal. And so that brings us up to where we are today. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Mary. This is what we call the strategic pillars. And the city manager sort of walked through these at the start. And at the core of that is this notion of this regional magnetism. So how do we build these collaborative approaches that create decisive action, and we have an educated citizenry? And then around that, we have these elements of the livable housing, thriving economy, and so on. And they're our topics for the next big phase of this project as we develop out the detail under these. So we have some starting ideas that we captured through the process, but also at that Future Summit. But our job now is to now convert this into some really detailed chapters that go into the comprehensive master plan. So Mary, can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the strategic pillar task forces. That's you. You're going to be obviously broken into these, right? So we obviously want to be reviewing the pillars where we've got to and develop action areas that are for that specific pillar. So this is a job about building that out with more detail. We have, just think of it as we have some broad ideas at the moment, but we now need to start to work this through into, quite sort of detailed and sort of clear plans. Obviously, you're going to have a role in reviewing draft chapters. We're going to ask you to participate in contributing to those. Obviously, we're going to ask you to contribute to the discussion boards and so on. But also, it's an opportunity to act as an ambassador for the project and help, I guess, probe community members and get their input and their reaction to different ideas that are surfacing in the task force group that you're part of. Mary, could you go to the next one? So this brings us to the topic for today and sort of the stage we're at. So, and Leslie and Courtney, I'm going to ask you guys to jump in here a little bit as well. So you can see here we had the Future Summit in October. That's that sort of on the left-hand side there, which was where we launched the task forces. And I know a number of you signed up at that point and people have signed up since. That was an opportunity, obviously, to connect the vision with the comprehensive master plan, and that's what the Future Summit did. We started to translate sort of lofty words and ideas into what this looks like on the ground in a land use or in a sort of a physical environment. And we have a multi-step process here between steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Leslie, I might invite you in here too, just to talk a little about perhaps step 2 particularly, and maybe step 3. And Courtney, if you're still with us, if you can jump on as well, just to introduce my colleagues here in a little bit more detail. So Leslie is with John Stover and Associates, JSNA, a really fantastic firm, Washington DC based, does really good economic development work, and we've partnered in numerous projects together. And just for your information, if you're on one of the task forces, is that JSNA is probably the lead master plan, Main Street organisation in the country. So as the go-to people who talk about placemaking, local economic development strategies and so on, right? So a fantastic resource, and I think really directly relevant to a number of the pillars that we have developed here so far. And then we have Courtney here. I don't see, is Courtney on the screen? I don't see her. But Courtney's with WGI. Yes, hello Courtney, there you are. Is with WGI. A really fantastic technical planning firm that has a lot of depth and expertise in transportation, land use, really figuring out the mechanics of a sort of comprehensive master plan and making sure it complies with all the requirements that you have to have in a modern plan for a city like Keene. So great partners to this process. So Leslie, do you want to just perhaps walk the group through a little about steps 2 and 3, and Courtney, I might get you to come in actually on the future land use map and just explain that and how we develop that when we get to that point. But feel free to back end onto Leslie's introduction here. So Leslie, please.
Well, thank you, David, for the kind words and the introduction. We're very excited to be working with you all through this process, and like you might have seen us in some of the engagements so far, and so we'll be in more and more of these engagements. Courtney and I will be really taking the lead on these task forces, and then also collaborating behind the scenes, bridging the gaps between the different pillars too, and looking at that very comprehensive web at how all these pieces come together in the comprehensive master plan. A little bit more about the process. So if you've been to any of our meetings so far or the think tank, you'll see a little bit of data here and there. If you've been on the portal, you'll see a snapshot report where we've got some data, some good baseline. We've been analyzing where we're at technically within each of these pillars, understanding the existing conditions and opportunities. And we're really starting to dive in the second step these months on best practices, case studies for each of these pillars. And I'm going to say you guys are setting the bar pretty high with looking for those really innovative solutions, looking to be those leaders in the country at some of these challenges too. So putting us to work already. As we take a look at some of those case studies, some of those best practices, saying, hey, what are other cities similarly doing to address some of these opportunities or meet these needs? We'll be working with the task force into January and February in particular to identify, okay, what are the goals and what are some strategies based on what's out there and our creative hats to say what can we do for each of these pillars to really move that needle in the coming years for Vision Keene 20 forward. And Courtney, I'll pass the mic to you and transition that. So as we think about each of these pillars, we'll also be working to collaborate in a few months, come back together as a group and really prioritize. Courtney?
Sure. David, did you have something to say real quick?
Yeah, if I could, Courtney, thank you for catching that. I wanted to add too is that on the discussion boards on the portal, if you go to the discussion board, there's a drop down there and there's a range of topics, and a lot of what Leslie was talking about in terms of best practices. Oh yeah, great, bring that up. That's fantastic. If you okay, and so the discussion boards there. So let's pick anyone you like. Thriving economy could be great. And if you go to that and you scroll down, then what you'll see is we've basically assembled a huge amount of resources here for you already, right? So there are links to existing reports. There's material from the snapshots. There's high-level trends. There's best practice. It's full of hyperlinks, so you can kind of click on something and go off and have a look at it. If you look there, for example, on that page, it's got the consultants' insights and potential trade-offs. This is our opinion, right? So this is not necessarily come from the engagement, but it's things that we think are worth looking at. You can click on those highlighted areas and it will take you to some really interesting case studies and so on. So there's a sort of we want to use these discussion boards as both a repository for the greatest and latest information, but also if you go down there, if you scroll down a little bit, Mary, you'll see that we've opened these up for comments. So you can add a comment or a thought or a question, and then you can reply to other people's comments. It is a little bit moderated, but basically you can start to see the different thoughts, and that's a really good place to have a dialogue, both as a pillar team, but with the community about the topic we're working on. Great, so thank you. So Courtney, I just wanted to add that while Leslie had been talking about it.
Yeah, sure. No, that's great. Good evening, everyone. Like Leslie said, we're really excited to continue working with you all and dig a little deeper into each of these pillars. But I'll just kind of mention the future land use map. I tend to find this part of the project very interesting because historically, a future land use map maybe is thought in the beginning of the stages, but we really like to, in our process, put it towards the end because it's really putting all the puzzle pieces together into this map. And so these pillars and the discussions that you've been having, looking at these case studies, figuring out maybe the actionary items or potential policies that you all feel like are applicable to meeting that vision and goals that you're looking for, then really come through in the future land use map. So again, I kind of like to think of it as the finished product to a puzzle, and we're picking up all these pieces, fitting them together, and then you'll have kind of that full image of looking at this map that helps guide your future development, whether that's transportation related, housing, economic development, but really lays that groundwork that would then lead into the tools that will help implement this master plan through your development regulations and zoning overlays.
Yeah, that's great, Courtney. Thank you very much for that. And there's a lot of technical, you did a really nice job of simplifying what's technically very complex into sort of a simple explanation. One of the things that I think the land use map is really good for as that sort of final piece is it helps show how those pillars can interconnect. We talked earlier on about community evolution and development trajectory and how they sort of interact or interrelate. I mean, your physical environment shapes your community behaviour. Your community behaviour, wants to dictate the physical environment. So that should all be coming together in that future land use map. It is also something that we will ask you as task forces to think about while you're working on your specific pillar. We're going to be also keen for your understanding of how those pillars interconnect. So there is a kind of a danger of sort of becoming siloed, right? But we do want to have a siloed approach and dig into it. But we always want to be thinking about, okay, how is our, thriving economy, how does that shape our different components like our environment or our workforce? How do those things interconnect? Or how does a vibrant neighbourhood approach and those elements connect to livable housing? So that's going to be part of your challenge, to keep an eye on those interconnections between the pillars. So Mary, do you want to go to the next slide, please? All right, so this will be our sort of concluding slide, and then we'll just open it up for questions. This sort of reinterprets the previous diagram, but our next steps, we have these task force meetings in January, February, March. We are going to ask that you prepare yourself, that you use the resources on the portal to inform yourself on the work that's gone, and sort of dig into the discussion board and the resources that are embedded in that. You may also have suggestions for case studies, etc., other ideas that we want to make this a sort of a collaborative process. So in these task force sessions in January, February, March, we're going to have a sort of a structure to sort of work our way through that. Then we'll ask you to weigh in on the prioritisation survey, obviously then into the implementation matrix, future land use map. And then we're really heading towards the 3rd of June, which is the Future Summit, which is the presentation of that, right? And obviously we'll find a creative way for your voice to be in that. So that was the presentation we wanted to give you, just as a bit of an overview. Thank you very much to the City Manager for coming into setting the stage for us, and then obviously to Leslie and Courtney for helping walk through that. So we want to open it up now for any questions or thoughts you want to have, or any clarifications, and then we've allowed a bit of time for that, and obviously once we conclude that, you'll be free to go and enjoy your evening. So how do we want to do this, Mary? Do people just want to put their hand up